Welcome to the deep dive. There's this persistent question in America today. Can we actually bridge our divides and maybe redefine our global purpose for this century?
It feels like it comes up constantly.
Exactly. So today, we're diving into a really ambitious new theory of American exceptionalism. It's stylized as A, and it tries to tackle exactly that.
It's definitely ambitious, not just another political argument.
It's presented as this comprehensive attempt to build what they call a stronghold, like a coherent, positive set of beliefs.
A response, they'd say, to a kind of crisis of confidence we're seeing, trying to move past both maybe uncritical flag waving and just tearing everything down.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What exactly is A? How does it even start to rethink something as big as American exceptionalism?
Well, what's really interesting is its structure. Think of it like a system with four interconnected parts. There's a core purpose bit, a way of thinking about truth, a political structure, and something linking it all to, like, human psychology.
4 parts. Okay.
Yeah. And at its heart, there's what they call the theological core. And this is key, it's about taking ideas often found in religion grand human goals and translating them into a secular political language.
Secularized theology. How does that work?
It takes two basic ethical ideas,
Yeah.
Love God and love neighbor, and reframes them as dynamic political principles. Fidelity to knowledge, which they kind of link to the political right,
Okay.
and inclusivity and sincerity, which they associate more with the political left.
Huh. That's a really interesting move. So history then, in this view, it progresses through the interplay, the sort of push and pull of these two forces. Is that the idea? What's the end goal?
That's exactly it. This dynamic tension leads towards meliorism,
Yeah.
the idea of steady societal improvement.
Meliorism, right.
And the ultimate aim, the telos, is what they term the Perusia, basically a future state of global human flourishing.
Yeah.
Think universal peaceability, charity, affinity.
Wow. Okay. And America's role in getting us there.
That's where ameliorating global stewardship comes in. The idea is America actively helps guide the world toward this Perusia state.
Actively helps.
Okay.
And the method for figuring things out along the way? I've seen terms like neo-traditionalism and metamodernism thrown around. What does that mean for how we're supposed to, find truth?
Right. That's the philosophy behind it. Neo-traditionalism here is presented as a meta-modern approach. So imagine trying to navigate between, say, modernism's faith in reason and progress and postmodernism's tendency to deconstruct everything.
Kind of finding a path between them?
Exactly. It oscillates. It wants to build a new, defensible stronghold of belief, moving beyond what they see as the sort of dead end of constant irony or skepticism. They even have this model where knowing something, epistemology, is explicitly tied back to those two ethical commands.
So what's ethically right actually guides what counts as true knowledge?
In their framework, yes. It's quite a claim.
It really is.
Yeah.
So how does all this big picture translate down to actual American politics? And how does it view the American nation itself?
Okay, so for governance, they use the image of a tensegrity framework.
Tensegrity,
Yeah.
like those sculptures.
Yeah, where you have rigid bars held in dynamic tension by wires. So the branches of government are the rigid compression pillars, and the checks and balances are the flexible tension wires.
Ah, I see. So it's about the balance, the tension.
Exactly. And progress, in this view, doesn't come from everyone agreeing. It comes from agonism, productive conflict between political rivals, like political physics, a tightening cycle that refines the system.
Productive conflict. That's a different way of looking at it. And the nation.
Crucially, it defines America not by blood or ancestry, but as a poliskin,
Poliskin.
meaning a people bound by a shared commitment to public reason, a common heritage of institutions, and an ethos of a shared future. It's like a political family, defined by commitment, not genes.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. But like any grand theory, this has to face some tough questions, right? How does E stack up against the usual criticisms of American exceptionalism?
That's the critical point, really. It tries to be different. It calls for active stewardship, unlike, say, Winthrop's passive city upon a hill, and it sees conflict, agonism, as the engine, which flips the old idea of a simple liberal consensus.
But the challenges.
Well, first, there's what people call negative exceptionalism. The ways the U.S. is an outlier for bad reasons, highest incarceration rates, maybe worsening infant mortality in some areas. How does a theory about meliorism, about constant improvement, square with that kind of aggression?
That's a hard one. And what about history, especially race and inequality? If the nation is defined by its heritage of institutions, well, those institutions have a complicated past.
Precisely. Critics, like those using critical race theory, argue that exceptionalism narratives often just paper over a history of racial oppression baked into those very institutions.
So the Poliskin idea tries to be race neutral.
It aims to be, yes.
Okay.
But critics would say it needs a really strong account of institutional redemption. How do you purify that inherited legacy to make the Poliskin truly inclusive? It needs more than just the concept.
Right. Makes sense. Any other major challenges?
Yeah, the foreign policy piece, it talks about being a global referee, not the world police. But acting as a steward, even ameliorating one, can easily come across as paternalistic, which is exactly what the theory says it wants to avoid.
How do you steward without being seen as bossy, essentially?
Exactly. It needs to really spell out the mechanisms of non-paternalistic stewardship. How does that actually work on the ground?
So wrapping this up, this deep dive really shows E as this incredibly ambitious, maybe what you'd call a metamodern gambit. It's trying to build a new, solid foundation for belief in a pretty chaotic world.
It definitely is. It's coherent internally. You can see how the pieces fit. But its real test, I think, is bridging that gap between the ideals, the Perusia, the Poliskin, and the often messy, contradictory reality of American history and its present. There's a big promise there, but also, potential pitfalls.
Yeah. And maybe the central challenge for the theory, and maybe for all of us, is that question. Can America's heritage of institutions actually be actively purified? Can they be redeemed enough to truly form an inclusive Poliskin? That's a huge question to chew on.
It really is.
And just as a final thought, it's pretty wild that the theory itself apparently proposes using AI, training it on specific texts to act as a kind of intellectual sparring partner to help refine these ideas further.
Yeah, using tech to push the philosophy itself forward. That's certainly very 21st century.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.